So Christy Clark's about ready to give her annual speech to BC's assembled politicians, and right on the eve of that, what do we have but the head of Petronas in Malaysia threatening to pull his $16 billion LNG plant. Is this for real? Is this negotiations? Is this a troublesome time for Christy Clark? Mike Smyth in Victoria, who knows all, will tell us.
All right, Ian. Yes, some interesting developments on the LNG file for Christy Clark. Remember, she got elected here in BC by saying we're going to have the streets paved with gold here because we're going to make so much money off of liquefied natural gas. We'll make so much money, we'll be able to wipe out the entire debt of the province. So that's what she's promised. So she's gone all in this whole LNG thing. Out of the blue today comes Shamsul Abbas. He is the CEO of Petronas, big company owned by the government of Malaysia. And as you said, they got a big LNG play here in BC saying, you know what, maybe we'll just pull the plug on the whole thing and go somewhere else. And he cited several concerns today, Ian. One of the things he said was BC's just been too slow to come to the party here. We're 40 years behind the United States. He's not happy with some of the regulatory and approval delays here in British Columbia. He also said the taxes are possibly too high here in BC. BC has rolled out or talked about a 7% tax on this industry. He says that's too high. Government says it's a very competitive tax. And on top of that, he says he wants incentives. Where are the incentives? You know, so on top of rock bottom taxes and lickety-split approvals, apparently he wants even more. And he wants some kind of incentives on icing on the cake loaded on top of that. Or he's possibly going to go somewhere else. I thought it was no coincidence at all that the CEO of this company makes these statements at a time when Christy Clark and her entire cabinet are gathered in Whistler at the annual Union of BC Municipalities Convention with all the local mayors and councillors from all across BC. So I think a very opportune time for him to say this. Interesting response from the government. Rich Coleman today, the energy minister, said he thinks this could be a negotiating tactic.
You think?
And I was thinking, Ian, really? Really, Rich? Do you really think that's what this is all about? It's a negotiating tactic to try and get a better deal. I think he could be onto something there, Ian.
Well, I think he's shared his wisdom with Premier Clark, because she basically said the same thing when people came out. They said, I think he's just looking for a better deal, and this is it. The problem for Christy, I think...
This is why we pay them the big bucks for this type of high-level analysis when these people come out and make these kind of demands. But you know what? I mean, sure, there's hardball negotiation going on here, but I don't think it's an idle threat that a company like this could pull up stakes and leave BC. This is a very mobile industry. This shale gas and the scientific breakthroughs around fracking to get the gas out of the ground, it's going on all over the world. And in the United States, I mean, they say that the United States got tons of shale gas, and they say it could be a lot cheaper to get an LNG plant up and running on, say, the Gulf Coast of the United States than here in Canada. So when this guy comes out and says, oh, yeah, you know, we might leave, yeah, it's a negotiating tactic, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, they could pull up stakes and leave, even though they've already spent millions of dollars here in BC already. But I don't think it's a total bluff. I think they could pull out and leave.
Well, isn't that one of the problems for Christy? And she's going to have to re-explain herself tomorrow. But she has essentially said that I'm basing my entire platform on attracting LNG, yet Petronas can go to Russia's building a pipeline to China. Australia has plants complete. Qatar is ready to go. The U.S., tiny little country, hey, they're competing with us. So Christy can say, I'm bringing $1 trillion of business. There's no guarantee she's going to bring the first dollar. Is that right, Mike?
Well, the company knows the political landscape in British Columbia. They know that Christy Clark won an election on a promise to get this industry up and running quickly. So they know that Christy Clark has gone all in on this thing. And sure, so they might think that they've got us over a barrel. Now, it's going to be interesting to see just how low will BC go. Are we really going to do a limbo dance here and do the old race to the bottom, cut our taxes, give this company everything they want, just because the Liberals politically have gone all in on this project and they want it? Rich Coleman today said, oh, I know this guy, Shamsul Abbas. I've talked to him. I've sat across the table with him, and we'll probably laugh about this all later after they've signed the deal. So I guess he's saying that sometime down the road, they'll sit down and have a Tiger beer. That's the brand of beer they like to drink in Malaysia, by the way, Tiger. And they're going to sit down and slap each other on the back and say, you know, we were just kind of a big bluff there, and now we got our deal. we will see. We will see.
I think we've got a local guy that's somewhat like Mr. Abbas. Jim Pattison, he plays a mean trumpet. He'll take you out on his boat for a cruise, but when it comes time to sign on the bottom line, you know he's going to drive a hard bargain.
Yeah, you know he's going to win. He's going to win. So we'll see who wins this time. And but, you know, if we turn around, if we just roll over and give this company everything they want and BC doesn't get the jobs out of it, we don't get the tax revenue out of it, there could be a political price to pay for that. So this is real hardball, high-level stuff here.
So we've got the NDP. Is this an opportunity for them? John Horgan, energy critic, hydro critic, seems to know an awful lot about this. Is he in a position to lay some damage on Christie and her handling of this?
Well, interestingly enough, he tried to do that today. John Horgan, the leader of the NDP, gave a keynote speech at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention as well today, and he focused on, lo and behold, LNG. Now, one of the things that he said was, look, we are not hostile to this business. The NDP has got an anti-business rap, but he's saying, no, we like LNG too. We want these companies to come and set up shop in BC. However, we want it under our rules, and our rules would be that we've got to have economic benefits for the province and for local governments. The NDP's talked about raising taxes. They've talked about making sure that British Columbians are first in line for the jobs. So he doesn't want British Columbia flooded with temporary foreign workers if we build these plants. And I think most significantly, he's also talked about protecting the environment. So don't forget that John Horgan at one point promised a so-called scientific review of fracking. And he did not rule out a moratorium on fracking if it didn't pass that scientific review. Now, what do you think a guy like Shamsul Abbas from Petronas, he sits down to do some hard bargaining with a guy like John Horgan, and Horgan says, oh, by the way, we may bring in a moratorium on fracking. I mean, how quickly do you think he's going to go down to the Gulf states of the United, go down to Qatar or Australia or the Gulf coast of the United States?
Yeah, Mr. Abbas says, I really like Arkansas. That's a great place to do business, right? They don't, Walmart and Petronas can set up shop there together with no environmental regulations.
Well, one of the reasons that the Liberals are in power today and the NDP are not is a lot of voters took a close look at this stuff last May and said, you know what, we think that the Liberals are in better shape to get the economy going and deliver these projects than the NDP. So we will see if Christy Clark can deliver on her promises, because she's certainly made a lot of them when it comes to LNG at the expense of a lot of other sectors of the economy. You know, a lot of people, Ian, think that she has just overemphasized this LNG stuff, oversold it. What about high tech? What about clean energy instead of fossil fuel energy? But no, she's emphasized big time LNG, and we'll see if she can deliver, because it's getting down to crunch time.
Thanks, Mike. Always insightful to talk to you. It'll be interesting to watch this. The rubber will hit the road soon, and we'll see whether Christie's driving a clunker or a limousine.